Hey friends, welcome back to Burn Stress Lose Weight. Today and next week, we're doing a two-part episode on how to troubleshoot any fail. Of course, we're going to be talking about weight loss and body goals, but the process you're going to learn this week and next week as we are celebrating the new year, as we are reflecting on this past year and preparing and planning for next year, I really wanted to do a breakdown in this two-part episode on how to troubleshoot what came up for you this past year and leverage that information so that when you do plan for wild success next year, which I believe everyone here listening to this podcast is capable of achieving some of their wildest dreams, to do that, we do not want to start fresh. I don't want you to come into January 1st with this fresh start energy where you have this brand new planner and not first take into account what actually came up for you this past year. This is a core philosophy of the entire burn, stress, lose weight process where we don't want to keep having fresh starts because you never build momentum. What we want to do together in this orbit, what this episode is going to break down for you step by step, is how to take a look at this past year through a really curious lens. There's no shame, blame, judgment, or criticism. We're going to talk about that too, but how to leverage what came up for you this year and actually learn from it. We want to identify what your gaps were this year. There's going to be some mindset gaps and some strategy gaps, and how you can take that information and bring it into your planning process for next year. And the best part about this two-part episode this week and next week, it's going to apply not just for your weight loss goal, for your health goals, your wellness goals, your body goals for next year. It's going to apply to any area that you have a dream for yourself, any area that you want to see up leveled. That next up leveled version of you is simply waiting for you to claim her. And my promise is when you take this process and again, really take it through the wisdom of your life this past year, you're going to start to see results really start to shift for you. I will say one caveat, and then we're going to be getting into the episode. This topic of troubleshooting fails can be really hard, particularly for the overachieving professional woman. And here's why. Overachievers, ask me how I know, absolutely hate feeling inadequate, confused, or behind. Okay. So if that is you, if you hate feeling confused, inadequate, or behind where you think you should be, that is going to be one of the key reasons that you maybe hold back from really developing this skill. One of the things that we're going to talk about this week is the vulnerability of taking 100% responsibility over your results this year. And I know that can feel really tricky, especially if you have a really contentious relationship with that feeling of inadequacy, with failure, with feeling behind. And also, I just want you to know that it is facing that vulnerability. It's building that discomfort tolerance, which we have been talking about on this podcast recently. It's building that discomfort tolerance to let yourself feel vulnerable. That is really going to be the lighter fluid to your success next year. Before I get into this episode, I want to make sure that you know I have a brand new live training happening in just a couple of weeks. It's on Sunday, January 11th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It's called The Weight Loss System to Total Freedom Next Year. This live training is intended for you to claim your next up level, your next version of yourself that is feeling deeply comfortable in her body, at her goal weight, comfortable in your skin, with a process that you don't just trust, that is science informed, that's free of the TikTok trends and random fads that are gone in 90-day social media cycles, but really having a sustainable strategy that can stand the real test of your real life, not just the life where everything happens to be working out perfectly, where you have the best schedule and the well-behaved kids and the supportive partner, but I'm talking about your real life, the one that has real messy obstacles, that has wrenches thrown in the plan, that has obstacles that come up that I want to show you how to troubleshoot, which is part of the intention of today's podcast episode. We are going to be getting into in deep detail on this training. And I say this because just having that plan on paper, which I know we love, and I don't want to take away from you next week on January 1st, when you open up that fresh planner, I'm not taking that away, but just having that plan on paper is not enough. If having the PDF from the nutritionist, or just eating less and moving more, or tracking every calorie or point, or labeling foods as green and red, good and bad, if that was really the solution, I promise you, you would have already lost the weight you had wanted to lose sustainably. Instead, what we want to do is move away from stale plans. That's like a simple printout from your nutritionist of eat this and don't eat this. And we want to move into having systems. As as an overachieving professional woman, you likely are holding many responsibilities and many hats. You have a career, you have your family, maybe you have kids. And when you have a big, bold life, it makes a lot of sense that you don't want or need weight loss and your body goals to feel like a whole separate full-time job. And so if you want to get rid of the drag that you have maybe experienced around weight loss and body goals, you need to come to this live training. You can go and grab your seat over at burnstressloseweight.com/training and make sure to block the time and attend live. Once you register, make sure you check your email inbox, check your promotions folder, make sure that you get our confirmation email with all of the details, because I'm also going to be sharing with you our live attendance bonus. And right after the training, I'm going to be opening doors for my next cohort of Burn Stress, Lose Weight, which is my 6-month group coaching program specifically designed for professional women who self-identify as overachievers. So if you know that your health and your body are a top priority for you in the new year, you know that you want to feel better with systems that are proven to work, that's going to overcome the stress and the overwhelm that you're experiencing around hitting this goal, then this might be a great next step for you. Don't wait, go and grab your seat for the training over at burnstressloseweight.com/training. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode, which is part 1 of how to troubleshoot any fail. And then next week, make sure you come back where we're going to talk about how to take what you learned from this episode and how to properly plan for a winning new year. I have been hosting this podcast for a few years now. We are almost at episode 200, which is just wild to me. But every new year, one of my favorite things to do on New Year's and usually my birthday episode kind of has some flavor of this. That's in May. I like to do an analysis of my year. I like to take those very natural markers of our year, like January 1st or the first of the month or a birthday, to take a natural pause and reflect back on how the year has gone. I think this is a really important part of the journey, to take a pause, to take a look. What went well this past year? What were some of the wins? What were some of the missteps? And especially when we come into an experience of a retrospective where we take a look at the past year, it can really give us a lot of information that we're not usually paying attention to. Now, if you go back and you listen to 2023 and 2024's January episodes, like my New Year's deep dive retrospectives, I shared how massively epically I failed in my fitness goal. So if you're brand new to me, hello and welcome. I should have said this at the very start of this episode. I'm Dr. Priyanka Venugopal. I'm a board certified OBGYN physician turned stress and weight loss coach for overachieving professional women. And one part of my story that I think is really important that I share for this episode specifically is back in 2018, when I weighed my personal heaviest, my only desire at that point was to lose weight. I didn't care about muscle. I didn't care about metabolism. I wasn't thinking about vitality. I was not thinking about any of those longevity metrics about what would be amazing for me when I turned 60, 70, or 80. All I cared about was I wanted to see the 3-digit number on the scale come down. I wanted to feel more comfortable in my gut. I wanted my clothes to fit more comfortably. Like, I had very different metrics. Many of them were vanity metrics, but those were the things that I was desiring at the first part of my journey. And after I had been on the roller coaster, up 20, down 20, up 20, down 20, I found myself 60 pounds over my ideal weight back in 2018. And I realized that, especially once I discovered coaching and mindset tools, that actually for me to lose the weight I wanted required more than just a PDF with calories in and calories out. And that was when I embarked on the journey. I lost a little over 60 pounds, specifically with nutritional changes and a lot of mindset changes in how I was living my life. I have shared a lot about that on the podcast, so I encourage you to go back and listen to some of those episodes where I share a lot of that story. But I lost a lot of that weight through nutritional changes, and I realized a few years ago, after I had lost the weight, that actually I didn't just want to maintain that weight. I wanted to focus on my next fitness goal. I was just entering my early 40s, and I started to think for the very first time, because weight loss was no longer a drag for me. I felt a lot of confidence in how I was eating. I felt a lot of confidence that I could maintain my results because of the first part of my work. I was ready to move on to the next goal, which was fitness, strength training, building muscle, really thinking about my 70-year-old self, thinking about my 80-year-old self. How can I support her vitality? It starts by me taking action now, right? I really was thinking about, speaking to last week's podcast episode, how do I want to treat this one ride or die body I have for the rest of my life? How can I take care of her? How can I support her? Because she's my one and only, right? This is our one body we have. How can I take care of her? And so when I turned 40, I started to really think about fitness. And one of the key things that happened when I first went on this journey is I had a plan on paper, as we do, January 1st. I really had a plan that looked great, actually. If you looked at it on paper, it looked awesome. If I just followed that plan, I would probably hit the goal. And yet, when I did my year-end review, while I had some successes in my life, definitely did. Fitness wise, in terms of the strength goals that I had massive, epic fails. Here's how my older self used to make plans, and part of the reason that I would usually have epic fails, like I did in 2023 and 2024. I would make a really strict and very regimented plan. A plan that looked very nice on paper. I would feel the gust of motivation, especially January 1st. January was like my highest high of motivation. Everything looked pretty. The planner was empty. There was no red marks, no missed days. I felt very full of belief. I was envisioning, like, imagine this year being the year that I completely transform my body. However, because I jam packed my calendar so full, I didn't have any white space. I didn't have any buffer room. I didn't take vacations or family trips into account. It was not something that I would be able to sustain. I wasn't actually able to maintain that type of structure. And worse than that, I did not build in other parts of my strategy. I wasn't thinking about rest. I wasn't thinking about fun. I was only focusing on the strict plan. And so, again, it was no surprise at the end of a hard week, I would take my foot off the gas. And this is where, since I would undo some of my wins, undo some of my progress, and sabotage some of my results, I would have so much self criticism, a lot of doubt, a lot of disbelief, a lot of, see, there you go again. You'll probably never get there. And it's that roller coaster ride where I would have a high of motivation, a high of excitement, make a super strict plan that was virtually impossible to follow it for a few minutes, experience a win, have it be too much, take my foot off the gas, and then feel this deep discouragement, total self criticism that led to the perpetual cycles of up again, down again. Up again, down again. It's like the whole history of my weight loss journey of why I would gain and lose the same 10 to 20 pounds. Now, in 2018, 2019, I learned a new way. And that was exactly how I embarked on my weight loss journey to lose 60 pounds. I really learned the role that my mind was having, the power of my mindset in how I was coming into my strategy. And what I realized in 2023, once I shifted my goal from purely weight loss to really thinking about my body as my one vehicle, me wanting to strengthen it and build on my metabolism, I realized that I came into 2023 without the right perspective. Yes, I did make some progress because, again, the work of 2019 through 2023, of course, played a role. However, I really missed the mark. I wasn't as consistent as I needed to be to achieve the goals. And I think the hardest part for me, if I really reflect back on 2023 and 2024, is that my nutrition was dialed for weight loss, but it hadn't been tweaked properly enough to support my muscle building activities. Getting stronger and hitting the gym and strength training required that I revisit some of my nutrition decisions that had been very successful for me with weight loss. And that was hard for me. Learning how to eat more protein, to focus on really supporting my muscle growth was a hard shift for me. It was changing my routine that actually was a big obstacle for me in 2023. The other massive reason that I had the epic fail in 2023 and 2024, which I learned from, which created success this year, which we're going to break down, don't worry, is every time that my life felt a little bit stressful, when I felt behind with work or a kid's soccer practice or swim team meet or my husband traveling, you name your flavor of life obstacle. As professional women, we have many of them. Any time that I felt even a hint of stress or overwhelm, the very first thing to go would be me going to the gym. Because the strength training session or the gym was the last thing that I would throw onto my calendar, it's not really a surprise that it was the very first thing to go. So I realized this past year, this past January 1st, as I was evaluating my results and noticing how much I had missed the mark, I realized a few things. Me going to the gym and supporting my fitness goals and my strength goals had become the last thing that I was putting on my list. I was trying to squeeze it into places. I was treating my body goals and my fitness goals kind of like an occasional hobby. Like, let's just see where we can do this. Let's just see when we have time. Let's just see when we can fit this in. And since I was treating this goal like it was a hobby, let's just see where we can fit this in, everything else, because we have many things, my kids, the soccer practices, the swim team, school drop-offs, meal prepping, taking care of the family, cleaning up the house, the laundry, everything in the house took priority first over that goal. The next thing, and this is more of a mindset element that I realized came up for me, and it was super subtle because I had made so much progress in so many other parts of my body goal journey, but this was super subtle. I had to pick up on it in 2024. I was not treating this goal like a non-negotiable. So whenever I felt stressed or overwhelmed with the work or anything coming up at home, it was always the very first thing to go. And so not surprisingly, if I really took a fine-tooth comb, which I did last year, I saw that I wasn't being consistent with my body goal activities. That is the very first thing to look at when you're troubleshooting any fail. This is a weight loss fail, a body goal fail, career fail. If you took a look at the calendar and the math of your actual week, where were the activities that would support you in achieving that goal? And I don't mean planning activities. So there's a huge difference between planning to work out, planning to meal prep, planning to eat a certain way, and actually putting meal prep on your calendar, grocery shopping on your calendar, the gym class on your calendar, the strength training session on your calendar, the yoga class on your calendar. Actually, having the planning session is one element of a success strategy, but the other part is the actual activities that's going to create the results. So I realized when I was assessing why I had such a massive epic fail in 2024, especially, it's because I did a lot more planning than I did executing. As I really did this entire retrospective, it was 2 years in a row that I had massive epic fails in terms of my fitness goal. I had to take to heart where my gaps were. And I was able to identify the mindset gaps and the systems gaps that I had that led me to have those failures. So I'm going to list each and every single one of them out on this episode. I want you to take each of these and put it through the filter of your life. Really think about where these mindset gaps or strategy system gaps came into play for you, because once we can identify which of these, it might be all, which of these came up for you, when you can take that information, now we can go and solve the real problem. I almost had another epic fail this year, but I'm going to share with you how this process helped me turn it around mid-year. So if you've been following along for a while, you might know that on January 1st of last year, I made a very bold claim, and it was very public because I shared it here on the podcast. I've shared it on my email list. I've shared it over on Instagram. The bold claim that I made was by the end of this year, AKA by December 31st of 2025, I want to be able to do an hour on the Stairmaster at level 9 and feel like I'm not losing a lung. That was my goal. And part of the reason, there's so many reasons that I came up with this goal. You can go back and listen to that episode, but part of the reason is I wanted to build my endurance as I also built strength. So these are two separate goals that I have. One is to strength train, the other one was to build my endurance, because my endurance was so bad that if I was on a Stairmaster for even just 5 or 6 minutes, I felt so out of breath. And as I was envisioning what I want to have more of for myself in the next year, 10 years, 20 years, I want to travel the world and go on some pretty monstrous hikes and not feel like I'm losing a lung. And so that's where this entire goal for me came from. It was a fairly random goal, 60 minutes on the Stairmaster at level 9, like I'm not losing a lung. And I said this with zero evidence that I could do it. So that's step one. Okay, step one is actually setting the vision. We're going to talk more about this next week, but it's so important to set a bold vision for yourself, because without that, we don't know which direction we're going in. So yes, it was fairly random, but it was something that I knew I wanted to do for me because it's going to let me have some of the experiences that I really want to have. Now, at the beginning of the year, January, I could again only do 5 or 6 minutes at level 9, and I had to take multiple breaks. But my plan at that point was I'm just going to add about a minute or two every single week. I'm going to build Stairmaster into the structure of my life. I talk a lot about structure, putting it on the calendar, right? This is an actual fitness activity. So instead of just planning for it in my mind and writing it onto a piece of paper or onto a calendar, I had to actually say on Thursday at 6 a.m., I'm going to go do the Stairmaster, or on Saturday at 8 a.m., I'm going to go do the Stairmaster. And actually having that activity on my calendar, and every week adding just 1 minute or 2 minutes was the roadmap. That was the plan to guarantee that by the end of the year, I would get to 60 minutes. There were two key elements that I completely changed this year that led to a lot of success. The very first one was I stopped treating this goal like a hobby and I made it non-negotiable. And that meant on a daily basis, I had to remind myself why this matters to me. This is something that most overachievers are completely skipping. We bypass this step. We don't think it's necessary or important. But if we don't remind ourselves why our goals matter to us, it's really easy to let just the natural drift of life get in the way. And it's really easy because you're a professional woman who has lots of other responsibilities for a goal that feels like a hobby or just a nice to have, start to slip down your list of priorities. So the first thing was really reminding myself that this matters to me. How I feel on December 31st is going to feel amazing. This is a goal worth having, and to treat it like a non negotiable. The second biggest change that I made this year was I really built in a lot of buffer and white space. So I had not done this in years past. In 2023 and 2024, I had this plan that looked good on paper, but it didn't account for the fact that I'm a human and not a robot, which means we sometimes have family trips or vacations. Sometimes I get sick. Maybe I didn't get proper sleep the night before. I had to build in multiple weeks throughout the year that accounted for zero progress. And this is one that can be really challenging for the overachiever who's used to having the student mindset. You think that you're supposed to lose 1 pound per week every single week or some level of linear growth. I think that that was one of the mistakes I made in 2023 and 2024. I thought I had to have linear growth, and it was so discouraging when I started to get behind because I created such a tight schedule. Every time I got behind, it felt so overwhelming and so discouraging that I would completely throw in the towel. So the two biggest changes that I made this year was I made it non-negotiable. It had to fit the math of my life, not a hobby, not a nice to have, but a must have for me. I had to communicate that with my husband. Even my kids knew. They could see me putting on my sneakers and they knew that mom is going to the gym. So this is again not something that I just kept quietly to myself. My core family unit knew how important this was to me. And the beauty of this is my family got to support me in achieving this goal. And the second element was really building in white space, blank space, buffer room, because there were definitely going to be some weeks that I went off track. It did not go perfectly. I noticed by around August going into September that I was falling quote unquote behind of where I should be. If I wanted to hit the 60-minute mark by December 31st, I was not where I needed to be by end of August, beginning of September, with the number of minutes that I could do on the Stairmaster without losing a lung. And I wasn't very far behind, but I was getting far enough behind. A couple of extra wrenches got thrown into the summer schedule that I did not account for. Even though I had my buffer space and my white space, I had more trips. My entire rebrand experience, which I have been sharing on the podcast, took me out of the DC area. I was traveling a lot more over the summer than I initially anticipated. I was speaking at a couple of conferences that I had not initially known I was going to speak at. So there's a lot more travel than I had anticipated. And because of that, I didn't get to the gym for my Stairmaster routine the way that my calendar was initially planned. Now, the mistake that I used to make in the past, and maybe you've done this too, is what I used to do was completely throw the plan out the window and have like a fresh start plan to think about the rest of the year. And instead of doing that, this was the third tweak that I made this year that made a huge difference. I had to make a hard call. And that call was, do I want to keep my 60-minute goal and slow down my pace? So maybe not 60 minutes at a level 9, but I could probably get to 60 minutes at a level 7. Like that is something that I could do humanely and I could actually fit it into the math of the year. Or would I prefer to do 45 minutes or maybe 50 minutes at a higher pace? So this was where I had to troubleshoot and make a call in changing my goal. And I think that this is really important because sometimes, especially overachievers, we set this goal and we think that it's etched in stone. We don't know how to properly change a goal and still maintain self-trust. Especially if you come into changing a goal as though it's like a fresh start, blank slate energy, that's not the right feeling to come into changing a goal from. And that's absolutely what I had been doing in 2023 and 2024. Anytime that I wasn't hitting the mark, instead of me really troubleshooting and getting detailed with what specific part of my goal am I going to change, I had that fresh start energy of let's just start from scratch and go from there. And because of that third element of the process where I had to really stop for a second, look at my calendar, look at the reality of my life, know that I was going to treat myself like a human, I had to make a hard call. Do I want to slow down my pace and still hit 60 minutes? Or do I want to keep a faster pace and do fewer minutes? I made the decision to do more minutes on the Stairmaster because that was where I know my growth edge is. That's the goal that I have for myself, to do more minutes on the Stairmaster. And I decided to slow my pace down. And I'm happy to report, even though it's not been perfect, and even though I did not hit my exact goal of 60 minutes at a level 9, for the first time in multiple years, I'm going to call this year a win, not another epic fail. I got to 56 minutes at a level 7, and I do take 2 to 3 breaks over the course of the 55 minutes. As I was assessing the difference between this year, the first year that I'm going to call this a win and a success, compared to 2023 and 2024, which were epic fails, there were 5 key things that I had to stop thinking to create this win. If you have a piece of paper and a pencil, I even suggest writing these down. These are going to be the 5 thoughts, perspectives, or beliefs you have to stop telling yourself as you move into the new year. And this is going to be a part of your troubleshooting experience. The very first thing is take quitting off the table completely. If the door is open even a little that you might quit, the moment that it gets hard, the moment that you feel stressed or overwhelmed or confused or inadequate or behind, guess what your very smart overachiever brain is going to do? It's going to quit. And this is not a personal moral failing or a weakness of yours. This is how human brains are designed. When you leave quitting on the table, it's the lowest effort option in the moment. Our overachiever brains that do not like feeling inadequate or feeling behind or confused or overwhelmed at any part of the process, we are going to choose the low effort option. What I've realized is when you simply take quitting completely off the table, make it non-negotiable, your brain is going to have to do the higher quality work of facing a discomfort. This is coming back to building your discomfort tolerance. When you take quitting off the table, your brain now has to do higher quality work on figuring, what was my gap just now? I wonder why I went off track. Did I overschedule myself? Did I let my mood of the moment take me off track? We end up having to do higher quality thinking and then higher quality problem solving, but it's only possible when quitting is not on the table. Number 2 is to watch your negative confirmation bias. So as humans, we all have negative confirmation bias. It's a normal tendency for all humans. It's just our brain scanning for danger, trying to protect us and help our survival. But just notice anytime that you hit an obstacle, or the scale is up a pound, or you didn't do exactly what you said, notice how often you think, how often you tell yourself, see, I knew it. I knew you weren't going to be able to do it. I knew you weren't going to go off track. I knew that you wouldn't hit that goal. I knew that it was a fluke. I knew that it was too good to be true. Start to pay attention to the thoughts you're telling yourself every time you go off track, because the thoughts you have in that moment that you experience an obstacle, a fail, a misstep, an off-plan moment, a scale up a pound, that is going to be the deciding factor on how you show up for yourself. When you tell yourself, see, I knew you wouldn't get there. See, I knew it was a fluke. I knew it was too good to be true. Check in with how that feels. It's usually the feeling of discouragement or disappointment or total disbelief that really drives you to not show up in the next moment. Number 3, get really familiar with what your unique stress archetype is. We did an entire 4-part series in November about the 4 different stress archetypes. If you're new to that, go back and listen to those podcast episodes. I have a stress quiz on our website that can help you identify your stress archetype, but it's really important that you start to uncover your natural patterns. Now, we all have all stress archetypes in us. That's completely normal. But when it comes to specifically your body goal, there's usually 1 or 2 stress archetypes that come to the surface. Get to know what your patterns are, because when you can start to become familiar with what your stress archetype is, how you handle the stress of an obstacle, the stress of a fail, the stress of a misstep, you can start to catch those patterns and respond differently. Rather than reacting with your most primitive senses, you can have a plan and a process to respond. Number 4, the 4th mindset element, the 4th thing to stop telling yourself as you troubleshoot this last year, is that you can't handle negative emotions. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is, I just can't handle it. It's just too hard. It's just too much. I know that it might feel true that a stress or an overwhelm feels very uncomfortable. It feels sometimes too big for us. But if you really sit with it for just an extra moment, emotions cannot actually harm us. They're not dangerous. They can't jump out of our body and attack us. This is why building discomfort tolerance has to be a part of the success recipe for you in the new year. But to do that, to build your discomfort tolerance and to build that resilience to handle fails, missteps, overwhelm, and stress, we have to first stop telling ourselves that certain emotions are too much. It's okay to feel stressed and disappointed and discouraged. Don't tell yourself that it's too much for you. And the last thing, number 5, in terms of a mindset element that you have to stop telling yourself, these are just thoughts that you're having that's getting in the way of you achieving your wins. Stop blaming your time or your potential. If you have thoughts like, I'm just someone who isn't organized, or I'm just someone who doesn't like to plan, or I'm just someone who doesn't have the time, you're really going to be limiting yourself. You have these low denominator thoughts about who you are and how you are. It's like as though it's etched in stone and can never change. And when you believe that about yourself, that you're just someone who doesn't have time, isn't a good planner, isn't organized, doesn't like to make decisions in advance, you're just someone who does that, you will keep creating that as your confirmation bias. When you let go of these 5 mindset elements, you take quitting off the table, you watch your negative confirmation bias, the see I knew it moments, you become really aware of your stress archetypes, you stop telling yourself that you cannot handle negative emotions, and you stop blaming your time or your personality type, you can start to do the deeper work of actually finding where your systems gaps were. Where were the systems missing in your strategy? What decisions were left unmade? Where did the math not actually math? We're going to talk about how to plan for inevitable success in next week's podcast episode. It's going to be the second part to this week, but the common through line is the longer you argue for your limitations, the longer you're going to keep it. I know how common it is to, like a rubber band ball, go back to some of your limiting beliefs about yourself, but just start to catch it. The thoughts you have about yourself, about the epic fail, about the misstep, the pound up on the scale, not being where you wish you were, all of those thoughts, while they seem practical and true, create emotions in your body. Those feelings of discouragement, disappointment, inadequacy, overwhelm, and stress, they don't happen in a vacuum. The universe did not plop them into our bodies. We have certain thoughts about the results we had of this past year, and those thoughts create emotions. And when we aren't aware of it, those are the feelings that drive how we show up. Anytime you took your foot off the gas or you let overwhelm or confusion or inadequacy drive you to quit, really just take a look at what created that result for you. We never ever take our foot off the gas in a vacuum. It is always preceded by a thought and a feeling. The truth is, everyone experiences failures. Some of them are public, some of them are very private, and you don't even know about it. But failures, missed moments, missteps, off-plan situations, pounds up on the scale, sabotaging some of your wins, going quote unquote backwards, these are not unique. This is not unique to you or to me. This is going to be a part of the human existence. It's going to be part of our forever journey. So what we want to do together is, rather than aiming or striving for perfect results or perfect results that last forever, what we want to get really good at is becoming consistent with troubleshooting hard moments. And when we get really good at troubleshooting hard moments and we start mastering that skill, you start to create a sense of self-confidence. So many women that I talk to just want to feel confident about their weight loss results. They have this fear of, what if I lose the weight, but what if I gain it back? And I want you to have an answer for that. It's not what if I gain it back. You 100% will gain it back. Because we're humans and not robots, we have different seasons of our life, different decades of our life. You might gain a few pounds and it never needs to be a problem. It is this work that we're talking about in this episode that, in my opinion, it's how you learn to create sustainable results for your whole life. So rather than wishing, hoping, and crossing your fingers that you can keep the weight off, what we want to get better at is navigating when the pound up does happen, when that random season does happen, when a natural drift in your life does happen. How can you have a process that you can come back to so that you can come back to yourself in a way that feels really good? When you start to separate the objective facts of this past year from the story you have about it, this is where you can start to unlock a lot of power. This is quick and dirty thought work, quick and dirty coaching. So for example, I gained a pound is a fact. I'll never get to my goal is a story. I didn't hit the gym this week when I said I would is a fact. I'm lazy or undisciplined is a story. I went completely off track and undid some of my gains is kind of a fact. See, there I go again. It's so impossible and so hard. That's a story. When you can start to separate the objective facts from your low currency thoughts, you can start to gain a lot of power because it's those low currency thoughts, the stories that create the discouragement that is robbing you of troubleshooting abilities. Today, we covered the 5 mindset elements, the 5 layers of thoughts that you need to stop thinking to achieve your wins for next year. I want you to really stop after this episode and write down what were the thoughts that came up for you in this past year that led you to not create some of the results you wanted. If you felt like you went off track or you had slower wins, or maybe you undid some of your results, let's first look at the thoughts you were having that led to that result. Just to recap, there are 5 things you have to stop telling yourself to be able to troubleshoot like a rock star. The first was take quitting off the table completely. You have to be like a dog with a bone when it comes to your goals. It has to feel like a non-negotiable. The second thing, watch your negative soundtrack. Anytime you go off plan or happen to gain a pound or forgot yourself, notice how often you tell yourself, see, I knew you couldn't do it. See, it was a fluke. See, I knew it was too good to be true. Catch that thought and let it go. Number 3, become really aware of your stress archetypes. We all have them. They're very normal. But instead of reacting to stress and overwhelm when you're in those seasons, start to have a pattern and a practice of responding. Number 4, stop telling yourself negative emotions are too much to handle. Stress, overwhelm, frustration, disappointment, discouragement, despair. There's going to be a flavor. We're going to have it. The truth is, none of these emotions can ever jump out of our body and attack us. They're not too much for you to handle. And number 5, stop blaming your time or your personality type or your potential. Believing that you are just a certain way is the reason that we don't make change. The reality is, most of the time, we had a systems gap or mindset gap that got in the way of creating wins. Come back next week where I'm going to talk about the 5 things you have to start doing to have inevitable wins in the new year, and take what we learned from this episode where we troubleshooted what got in the way and take it like leverage for your next year. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. I hope you guys are all enjoying a lovely holiday and a beautiful December with your families. And if you haven't already signed up for our live training, make sure you head over to burnstressloseweight.com/training and join me live on January 11th. It's a Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to be breaking down the 3 weight loss systems that's going to create complete freedom for you. You're going to learn how to get 10 hours back per week with systems that are simple and repeatable so you can start losing weight in a way that doesn't feel like another full-time job. I hope you guys have an amazing week, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye.